When that cow finishes, put her cups on her and then close that bale down, okay?
Andrew Hoggard's life revolves around cows.
So this is them getting milk?
Yep.
How many cows do you have?
So at the moment there's about 540.
He's a third-generation dairy farmer. His herd, part of the nearly 6 million cows that rule the New Zealand countryside.
Now where to?
In the past 30 years, the dairy industry has reshaped the landscape here. Small family farms have given way to intensive operations. The number of dairy cows has almost doubled, and milk products are now the country's biggest export.
That's just 445.
She's eager.
Yeah.
This is a pretty big business in New Zealand.
Yeah, it's definitely an important industry for New Zealand. I like to think we lead the world in it. Come on.
Most days, Hoggard loves his job. It's beautiful, peaceful, and the money's pretty good. But these idyllic, pastoral scenes hide an uglier truth.
There's farms like this all over the country, but these cows are actually quietly part of some of the biggest environmental problems.
Cows produce a lot of waste.
Stuffed in a big pile of cow shit.
From both ends. Their urine is full of nitrate, which pollutes the water supply. And their burps, which are silent, release a near constant stream of methane, a powerful gas that's helping to heat up the planet. Agriculture is actually responsible for almost half of New Zealand's greenhouse gas emissions. Under Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern, the government outlined a plan to get to carbon neutral and set aggressive targets to cut methane emissions from agriculture by 10% by 2030 and by up to 47% by 2050. To get there, New Zealand will be the first in the world to charge farmers a so-called burp tax. The more gas your animals release, the more you pay.
The proposal as it stands means New Zealand's farmers are set to be the first in the world to reduce agricultural emissions.
Farmers have been protesting the idea since it was announced, echoing the last time they pushed back on a government attempt to crack down on agriculture 20 years ago. Back then, farmers led a revolt against what they dubbed the fart tax until it was withdrawn. But the current proposal shows no signs of going away. It's set to take effect in 2025. Hoggard, who until May was the president of New Zealand's Federated Farmers, has been one of the loudest voices against it.
When you hear the government say, we're going to impose this tax on farmers, what's your reaction? What are you thinking?
Bugger off is generally the first thought that comes to mind.
To comply with these policies, would you have to cut back your herd?
Yeah, 10% reduction. I'd have to produce 10% less milk, which would probably mean having 10% less cows.
How does it feel to have your cows be in the same conversation as, fossil fuels or other pollutants?
I look around and I'm hearing birds chirp and, this is what's destroying the planet? I don't think so. It's called global warming, people, not New Zealand warming.
New Zealand is home to some of the most stunning natural beauty in the world. Rolling green hills, majestic mountains, and iconic surf breaks. In fact, the country ran a full ad campaign touting the slogan 100% pure.
It's like a religious experience out in the water, It's a sacred spot.
Chris Wilkes has been surfing here his whole life, but some of his favorite places are now being ruined by pollution.
From the sea to the mountain, used to all be forest and wetlands, and now it's just dairy land. So you get a lot of nitrate, fertiliser runoff, and fecal matter and stuff from the cows.
So it's the cow poop running down to your river?
Yeah, it's a diluted version of that. The urine as well gets in the groundwater and makes its way to the rivers. It's really gnarly. It's such a beautiful place.
So many cows.
Oh, fuck yeah.
So this is the spot?
Yeah, this is the spot.
Which way?
I'm gonna head on over this way.
What's down there?
Shitty River. Yeah, so this is the sort of thing we've been dealing with in the past a lot. It's this. This is all just growing in the river.
Ew.
Yeah.
What is this?
It's a type of algae that grows when you've got excess nutrition, excess nutrient runoff. So,
What does that do to this water?
well, it just chokes the bottom, so you don't get the invertebrates growing. It just chokes your streams.
Yeah, what happens if you swim in this kind of water?
You end up getting earaches and sinus infections and things like that, which is not how it should be. You should be able to swim in all these waterways, but we've got the industry kind of going rampant.
How does it make you feel to go to some of these spots and see how polluted they are?
It's totally gutting. I think we're at a bit of a crossroads at the moment. You can't just say take away the cows, because then you're killing livelihoods. And the human impact on the land is far more dramatic than it needs to be. When I'm dead and gone, my daughter's going to surf here, and I want her to be able to surf here without getting sick. We can market ourselves as Clean Green New Zealand, but the only green I see here is on the reef, you know. It's not clean green at all.
The government's own data has shown that New Zealand has some of the most polluted water in the developed world. 45% of the country's rivers are unswimmable. 60% of the country's fresh water sources carry concerning levels of nitrates, and up to 95% of the rivers in rural areas are contaminated. The biggest cause, dairy cow urine, which seeps into the ground and leaches into the water. Nitrate has been regulated for decades because high levels in drinking water were found to cause health problems. But new data suggests even lower levels, which are legal, are linked to bowel cancer and premature birth, at levels well below the standard set to prevent blue baby syndrome, a condition where babies don't get enough oxygen.
So we're in Southland, which is the southernmost part of New Zealand and the part of the country with the highest rates of bowel cancer. A few years ago, scientists started to explore the link between bowel cancer and the nitrates that go into the ground from cow urine and other factors in dairy farming.
Is the water from a bore, or is it town supply?
Are you number 125, 26 and 27?
Local scientists have teamed up with Greenpeace to offer free water testing around the country and explain the risks of high nitrate.
As the nitrate concentrates, the potential health risks increase.
Steve Abel is an environmental activist and Green Party candidate. He helps residents interpret the results of their water tests.
Do you want to come and sit over here with me and I'll tell you what the results mean?
Under 1 is what most people are drinking. So that's pretty elevated by national standards. And you are too, yeah, it's pretty elevated. The New Zealand College of Midwives is saying that pregnant women shouldn't be drinking water above 5 milligrams, and probably a lot lower, really. You want a lot lower in nitrate than that.
Our first son was 8 weeks premature when he was born, and perhaps it had something to do with the high nitrates.
Is that something you're just kind of putting together right now for the first time?
Yes. There's dairy farmers that are, across the road, basically.
So you think it's coming through your neighbouring dairy farms?
Yes.
So there's not much on your end that you can do?
No, there isn't.
How does that feel?
Very frustrating. Yeah, very frustrating.
Talking about the downstream effects of dairy farming can feel taboo in rural areas, but it's these residents whose water is the most impacted.
So yeah, we're just heading up just outside Balfour in Southland to the farm of Chris and Christine. Christine came into our testing yesterday and found that they had high nitrate water. She let us know that she had been there for so many years and that her husband had been diagnosed with bowel cancer. Yeah. Beautiful day.
Have you ever had your water tested before?
No.
This is the first time?
No.
Were you surprised by the levels that you got?
Well, I was actually, yes, but I was diagnosed with bowel cancer about 3 years ago, but...
It's an age thing, you know, you get cancer more as you get older anyway, don't you, you know? So...
Was this the first time you heard connections between the nitrate and potentially bowel cancer?
Yeah. It's just another problem. No, it takes me a bit to get upset, so...
In the absence of organized government testing, Abel acts as a kind of detective, trying to help people trace their exposure and find cleaner sources.
That looks all right.
What can somebody do if they get a high reading?
Yeah, well, that's the great challenge we have, and that's sort of the injustice of the situation.
Clean enough? Yep.
It's not contamination coming from their own property, and it's part of a system problem. And so we need to fix that system problem.
What's the solution when you look around the country?
If we want to have safe drinking water, we need to farm differently. Dairy is king in New Zealand. You know, it has a huge power and influence on politics, on culture, on the economy, and people are reluctant to speak out against it. We're sacrificing what we hold most dear as characterising New Zealand as an idyllic place to live. And do we really want to do that just so Fonterra can make billions of dollars?
Fonterra is New Zealand's biggest company. It's run as a co-op owned by 80% of the country's dairy farmers. It's also the country's biggest climate polluter, responsible for roughly a fifth of its total greenhouse gas emissions. The company would not make a representative available for an interview. In an email, a spokesperson told Vice News, safe drinking water is a serious issue, but that Fonterra relies on experts in this field to set legislative limits, and pointed to research the company co-funded that found it highly unlikely that nitrates in drinking water present an increased risk of cancer. Fonterra also stressed its commitment to lowering emissions, noting it's investing more than $1 billion over the coming years to reach net zero by 2050. We know we need to do more, which is why we're continually working to reduce our environmental impact while continuing to produce some of the most carbon-efficient dairy in the world. It's now one of half a dozen dairy companies working in a joint venture with the government on scientific solutions. One of these studies measures how much methane different bulls emit so they can breed climate-friendlier herds. Other studies focus on creating new plants to change how much gas and nitrate animals produce.
This is the place where government scientists are working to test how they can genetically modify the plants that cows and sheep eat to see if they can lower the emissions.
Leading these efforts is Harry Clark, a scientist himself, who now hands out money to these researchers on behalf of the government to help save New Zealand's dairy industry from itself.
This smells like the inside of a cow's
This
stomach.
smells like the inside of a cow's
Okay,
stomach.
that's why it
And once
smells
you've got
so
it
bad.
in your fingers, it takes you about a week to scrub it off. It's not something that's nice.
So this is like a lab version of a cow's stomach.
This is the lab version that you put stuff in and extract the sample off. We take the gases from that sort of system, and then we can put the gas through here, which is a gas chromatograph. This is how you analyze the gas.
Is this a problem that science can solve, or are there just too many cows?
It's a problem that science has to address. We've passed a big barrier, which was farmers were not necessarily seeing it as a big priority. And now it's up to science to provide those tools to enable farmers to make those changes.
And you're sitting in the funding seat. Does it make sense to have, one of the biggest offenders coming up with the solutions?
No, I think, to me, it's very exciting that companies are getting involved in the research, because Fonterra is a cooperative. It's owned by the farmers. It needs to take control of the problem.
Is any part of it, kind of an expensive smokescreen of saying, like, we're going to put all this money into this development so we don't have to get rid of any of these herds?
No, I think that frames the problem as, you've got to reduce animals. If you could stop the environmental impact, why would you need to reduce animals?
And you think that's possible?
I think it's definitely possible.
How urgently does this have to be solved?
yesterday if possible.
How big of a problem do you think your cows are in the scheme of things?
In the scheme of things, compared to, the traffic jam I was sitting in 2 weeks ago, doesn't compare, I think the conversation needs to be more about what are the solutions, what are the technological breakthroughs that we need to be focusing on, rather than at the moment it feels like it's more a flagellation exercise where we all want to whip ourselves into forgiveness for what we've done to Mother Earth. It's about balancing up that carrot and stick approach. I'd be happy if there was just a carrot as well as the sticks, but at the moment in New Zealand all we've got is the sticks.